Well, good evening, visitors. Welcome to the Australian War Memorial's Last Post ceremony. My name's Richard Cruz, and joining us today from the Royal Australian Navy is Warrant Officer Sharif Ayers. We welcome the veterans who have served, those that are still serving, and the families that love and support them. We acknowledge the members of RSL Services Clubs Association, RSL Victoria and RSL Queensland, who are watching the broadcast of this ceremony across Australia. And during this evening's ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of the pool of reflection by visitors to the memorial. If you're able, I invite you all to please stand and join in singing the national anthem. If you're able, please be seated. The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's First World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through to the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was this would be a place where families and friends could mourn their loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed in the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit, in the heart of the land they loved, and here we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight we'll read the story behind just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of more than 102,000 men and women who have given their lives for us in war and on operations for more than a century. But first we present a lament, Flowers of the Forest. Wreaths and floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the pool of reflection.
Today, we remember and pay tribute to Private John Rowe. John Rowe was born in 1871 in Sheffield, a small village in Cornwall, England. Very little is known about his early life, his family, or his decision to emigrate to Australia. Records show that he served in a volunteer artillery unit for 3 years in the Illawarra region of New South Wales. When war broke out in Europe, Rowe was living in Kalgoorlie, Western Australia, where he was working as a miner. Rowe enlisted in the Australian Imperial Force in April 1916 and trained at the Army camp at Black Boy Hill for several months. In September, he sailed for Fremantle on the transport ship Clan MacGillivray, arriving in England in November. The following month, he sailed to France to join the fighting on the Western Front. There, he joined his unit, the 11th Australian Infantry Battalion. During winter and into the spring months of 1917, the 11th Battalion was stationed in the Somme Valley in northern France. It was the coldest French winter in memory, and the troops suffered in the terrible conditions. In February, Rowe came down with laryngitis and spent time recovering in hospital behind the lines. He returned to his unit at the beginning of March. As the weather warmed up, it became apparent that the German forces had staged a deliberate withdrawal from their front lines. They had withdrawn to a heavily fortified position known as the Hindenburg Line. Australian units were involved in following up this movement, and they carried out a series of attacks on the Hindenburg Line. One of these attacks was a failed attempt to capture the French village of Bullecourt in April. The 11th Battalion participated in the second attempt to capture this village in early May. Rowe and his unit relieved the troops who were captured the front German trenches and then held the captured ground against the determined infantry counterattacks. On the 9th of May 1917, the 11th Battalion was in the process of being relieved and moving to the rear areas where it came under artillery barrage. Rowe was struck by a shell and killed instantly. He was 45 years old. Rowe's body was buried where he had fallen, but in the chaos of the battle, the location of his grave was lost. His name is inscribed on the Villers-Bretonneux Memorial in France, alongside more than 10,000 Australian soldiers who were killed in France and have no known grave. John Rowe did not appear to have any living relatives. He had listed a friend in Kalgoorlie as his next of kin, and his friends and others left an obituary in the local newspaper when they heard of his death. It read simply, "He died for his country." Private John Rowe is listed on the Roll of Honour on my right, among almost 62,000 Australians who died while serving in the First World War. This is but one of many stories of sacrifice and service told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Private John Rowe, who gave his life for us, for our freedoms, and in the hope of a better world.
Please stand for the reading of the ode and the sounding of the last post.
They shall grow not old, though as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun, and in the morning, we will remember them.
We will remember them.
lest we forget.
Lest we forget. We leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Poziere or in the low scrub at Gallipoli, with his poor, tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain, has thought in his last moments, well, it's over. But in Australia, they will be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, girls and boys, that concludes this evening's last post ceremony. We thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial and wish you all a very good evening. Thank you.